Peace and blessings, shapeshifters. Welcome back to another episode of the Shapeshift Your Life podcast. Happy new month. It is a new month of May, and we know that new months are amazing beginnings of new cycles. I don't know about you, but March was a hectic month for me. April got a little bit better, and I really feel strongly that we are really in the midst of a new era. As you all may remember, 9 is a year of transformation. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, the year of 2025 adds up to the number 9. And so there is a lot of death and rebirth happening on the planet right now. And so I just want to encourage you all to continue to work your spiritual practices, continue to remember those new earth currencies, because literally it is our spiritual foundations that are going to support us through these changing, beautiful, beautiful times, despite what the media may be sharing. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to talk about the spiritual significance of the movie Sinners. Now, if you know anything about me, you know I don't even really like mainstream movies. I do watch them because I feel like, and I know that Hollywood literally is an agent of predictive programming. And so often I look at these things to see what they want to imprint upon the consciousness of the people at the time. And even when you look at when the movie came out, it came out on Good Friday, which precedes Easter Sunday. We know that Easter represents resurrection. And we also know that April is just a powerful, powerful time for many cultures, whether you're talking about the spring equinox, which even though that happens in March, it's at the end of March. We know that many cultures from Passover, Ramadan, the Iranian New Year, many cultures all over the world celebrate and honor this significant time. And so it should not be lost on any of us that this imprint, because that essentially is what a film is. It's an imprinting on the consciousness of people. In many ways, films are some of the most provocative and powerful forms of spell casting, of ritual, because they are programming our subconscious mind and we are absorbing all of that information. So this is a spoiler alert. If you did not watch the movie, you should not listen to this podcast. This is for people who have actually watched the film. So I have to shout out Ryan Coogler because he's from Oakland, California, which is my hometown as well. It's town business all day. So the movies takes place in the Mississippi Delta. And we know that the Mississippi Delta was one of the hardest and most rigid and exploitive spaces for African American chattel slavery. We know that the Mississippi Delta specifically is a very spiritually significant place. One, because of the native indigenous Americans who dwelled in the Mississippi Delta that were highlighted in the film, the Choctaw people. Even the word Mississippi traces its roots specifically to their language. And we know that when you look at all cultures all around the world, there is a cosmic frequency of the South, whether you're looking at the global South, American South, anywhere in the South, there's always a power dynamic. And it tends to be the power dynamic that the people in the South are ruled over by others. And so this energetic also contributes to some of the greatest art and music and culture that is known around the world. And so we know specifically the voice of the African in America, because we were not allowed to have our drums, had to syncretize our African spirituality through Christianity, because Christianity was what we were allowed to practice. And so out of that comes the tremendous, powerful, impactful voice of the African American, and that voice lending itself specifically to gospel music and Sundays being the opportunity, being the time, being the moment where slaves and eventually sharecroppers were able to worship, were able to be off of work. And so we know that that lineage of the African American voice and gospel music transcended into blues, transcended into rock and roll, transcended into jazz, transcended into hip hop, right? It's literally a full circle moment. And so when you want to look at the roots of where American popular music came from, you have to go to Mississippi. You have to go to the Delta. And so in the centering of the African American experience in this film, what you get is the centering of African spirituality and the power of African spirituality, the currency of spirit, the currency of music. We know that this is the music that then became the cultural spell of the entire world. So when you look at the soundtrack for everything that's going on in the planet right now, the soundtrack is often the Black voice, and specifically it is the Black voice of the African in America. That voice has been utilized by displaced Africans in America as a form of liberation, and also, as we see in the film, co-opted by the enemy that's called the devil. And there's explicit use of the word devil throughout the film. Devil being something that we don't have an equivalent for in African spirituality. However, devil representing the other side of the spectrum. This spectrum, good versus evil, continues to play itself out. And so in that space of the devil, you have these Africans who in America who are literally living under the 2.0 version of slavery, which was sharecropping. And sharecropping is something that is very personal to me because my family in Richmond, in Virginia, before they moved to the city of Richmond, were also sharecroppers. I have a lineage of sharecropping and farming in my family. And we know that what sharecropping did is after so-called freeing of slaves, it really just left Africans right on the same plantations. And we saw this in the film when they were coming to the juke joint to pay, many of them actually were using coins from these farms. These kind of modern day plantations are not just spaces where you're held by chains and whips, that plantations can also be spaces where you are quote unquote free, where you have the ability to move and navigate. Plantations can also be spaces where you get paid to do work, right? But you are still on a plantation, and we can see the symbolism even playing out to today. We're still receiving the coins, the currency of our enslavers, the currency of the devil, and we're still utilizing that to navigate. So how free are we? And so you see embodied in Smoke and Stack, you see the embodiment of them struggling with that, struggling with the fact that they said, hey, we are from here, but we actually had to leave here to seek out new spaces of sanctuary, of safety, of opportunity. This constant narrative that we see of Africans in America of having to go to new lands to try to obtain a freedom that they were not able to get in the South. And so they went to Chicago, and we see the migration of Africans from Mississippi into Chicago. So there's a huge history of the migration patterns of Mississippi to Chicago, its roots in blues, its roots in jazz. If you go to Chicago to this day, it is a very, very country place. And so these twins going seeking sanctuary to find that there is no sanctuary, to find that, as they said, that Chicago was just a plantation with larger buildings. And so many of us have gone to new places, new lands, new states, thinking that there will be a level of equality, a level of freedom, only to find out that that is not the case. Even with the wealth that they had generated, regardless of the way that they obtained that wealth, you see that wealth was not enough, that still did not exempt them. It still did not protect them from the devil, from the negative forces that were influencing and hell bent on controlling them and keeping them in a place of slavery. Also, when we look at the significance of Smoke and Stack, what do we see? We see this power of twins. We know that in African spirituality, twins, Ibeji, as we call them in the Yoruba culture, are extremely significant. Ibeji representing wealth, represent a multiplying fact. Ibeji representing duality. And so I would argue that even though they showed us these individuals as two different people, brothers, twins, Ibeji in the film, that duality is really representing the good versus evil, the duality within. And so you saw in the film one twin who was, more grounded. He had a sister. He was with the conjure woman. He had his mojo bag around his neck. And you saw the other twin who was kind of battling his relationship with a white passing woman. He was kind of more the bad cop. He was kind of more of the aggressor. He was about making money. He didn't want to make no deals. And as they were navigating that good versus evil, you saw that there was a specific placement of the African American woman in America. Here she is, the conjure woman. Here she is in outskirts of town. She's in a cabin surrounded by the forest. She is the place where the grave site of the father was. So she is the one who is caretaking the dead. So you see young children coming into her home, getting roots and herbs that they're getting ready to take back to their family. She is the one that everyone is coming to utilize the roots and the herbs and the prayers and the spells, if you will, to be the energetic stabilizer for her home, her community, her town. We want to honor Hoodoo culture because in Hoodoo culture, what we see is the syncretization of African spirituality. She's no longer in Africa, but she's finding the roots and the herbs in the Mississippi Delta. She's utilizing High John Conquer root. She's utilizing the power of strong liquor. She's utilizing the power of prayer. She's utilizing the power of the elements and the forces of nature in order to protect. She is the one who is the protectress, healing him even while he was away. As she said, I've been praying for you. I've been doing spell work for you. She is the one who gave him the mojo bag. She is the one that when the vampires came in, knew who they were. Oh, that is not just any other spirit. That is a vampire. She knew the name. She knew the protections. She knew that they had to pull out the garlic, that they had to pull out the silver, that they had to, draw a stake through the vampire's heart. So here we see embodied again in the Black woman. She is the oracle. She is the North Star. She is the waymaker. She is the one communicating with the dead. Even as she transitioned, we see her living in another dimension with her child. So we see the multidimensionality of her spirit and of her power and how Black women are always used to fuel the world, to fuel the community. And in the end of the day, what did she gain? You could argue that she gained eternal life because we see her in all white with her baby at the end, and clearly she's in a place of peace. But we also see how Black women continue to martyr themselves, that they are the ones that are called upon in times of crisis. He was like, yo, we need you to cook tonight. I need you to, pray. Let me get some love and let me get this mojo bag. She needed to give of herself, but was the Black woman really honored and revered? And so spiritually, we're learning again that there's a constant tapping into her womb, but is she able to really receive? First off, who are the people that were trying to warn you of the vampire? Who were the people who were warning you? It was our Native brothers and sisters. It was our Choctaw brothers and sisters who were saying, wait a minute. And here we see the power of our Native American indigenous brothers and sisters, always with a warning, always the ones saying, look, that ain't gonna work. In many ways, they were some of the first people to encounter the European and to have to deal with that. So they knew when this energy showed up on the land that something was off, and they took it upon themselves to attempt to destroy it until nightfall came. They went to that door and they said, hey, lady, I don't know if you're holding this thing in your house, but if you are, it's a negative energy. But soon as they saw nightfall came, they were like, you know what? Self-preservation is the first law. Go listen back to the last episode. I'm not about to sacrifice my family for this. We going home. We out. We told y'all what it was. And what did we see over top of the house that the vampire entered? We see 3 black crows. We see the symbolism of the crows. We know that in Yoruba culture, large birds represent the Iyami Aje. The Iyami are the divine primordial mothers that were called witches by the Europeans. These primordial mothers are the ones that bring death, and they are also the givers of life. And so we saw encircling the vampire spirit, encircling this negative entity that is now entering the scene. We see the role of the 3 birds, right? 3 also being a symbolism of Eshu, 3 representing the change of a crossroads. We saw those birds come as the time of day was shifting from day into light, that transitional time. Here are the Iyami encircling this entity to harness the power of death and the power of life. And it's worth noting that this vampire spirit was not the spirit of the white people that lived on the land. This was a different entity. This was a different entity that was coming to literally use the bodies of everyone that it encountered as a host. And so spiritually, what do we learn from this? We learn that there are spiritual forces out there that are not wishing you well. And this goes back to the power of protection. And so those negative forces were not in the white people, but they were able to be infected by them. Why were they able to be infected? Because when that white man came to the door, he said, look, I'm being chased by these Indians. I'm being chased. And they said, wait a minute, are you sure it's some Indians or and it's not some light-skinned N-words? That gave him passage into the home, because as we learn, you have to accept evil into your house. And what was the thing that allowed the evil to enter the home? What allowed the negative energy to enter the home? It was the othering. It was, oh, but these native people. Oh, but these black people, anytime that there is this othering, where we can call someone else the enemy, it decreased the defenses of the white people. And now they're more open. At first, when they opened the door, they had guns ablazing. But as soon as we talked about other people who are perceived enemies, you put your defenses down to such a point where the real enemy was able to walk right in. You invited the enemy in. You gave the enemy safe space. And also, what lowered the defenses? When he opened up his hand and he showed he had money, he had gold coins. And so the spiritual significance of this is people are on their square. This family was ready to protect itself. But then when the othering came in and when the individuation came in, all that went out the window. And that literally cost that family their entire life. So what do we learn from this? We learn the fact that when something shows up, right? Saying it's too good to be true. When something shows up, as they say, everything that glitters is not gold. When something shows up and it's using othering and racism as a tool, as a tool of let's all get together to collaborate. They were willing to let everything go for the power of money. Once that gold started to sparkling, people started lowering their values. People started dismissing it. Well, let me get this money. And that's what's going on in society right now. We are allowing billionaires to take over. We are allowing wars to be fought in our name. And no one cares because people are so quick to idolize and worship the dollar that we don't realize that in the process of worshiping the dollar, we're allowing a vampire into our home. When we look around at the products that are in our home that are built in sweatshops, when we look around at the products that are built in our home that are created by workers that are literally living in modern day plantations, when we look at the products that are in our home that are degrading and destroying the planet. But again, because we're worshiping the dollar, we don't realize the impact that it's not only killing us, but it's killing the planet, that it's going to affect the next 7 generations, going back to our Native American brothers and sisters who are saying, every choice that they make today is not just a choice for them. It's a choice for the next 7 generations. So when you throw that out the window, what you get is what happened in the town, that everyone got infected. And what we're seeing right now is that on the planet. Everyone is now infected with the cancer, with the virus, with the vampire energy, if you will, of sucking. Because what we also see in that is that they don't have the juice. They have to get the juice. They have to get the power. Where do they have to get the power from? They have to go to the root. They have to go to the place where the powerful Black people are in ceremony, and they have to harness their ceremonial creative currency. This is why they were going after the man who was this prolific artist, who was battling his own dual struggle of good and evil within himself. His father was a preacher. He was being called into the church, but there were parts of the church that didn't resonate with him. And he also knew that he had this gift. And as you saw, as the vampire approached him, he said, I sensed you. I sensed your energy. And so that's what's happening when you are a child of the light, when you are a child of God, when you are on assignment, bringing your natural born gifts to the world. You are being sensed by negative energetics that are going to be drawn to you like a moth is drawn to a flame. And their entire goal is to convert you, is to tempt you, is to offer you gold and distractions and illusions of wealth to get you over onto their side, to get you to utilize your gifts to sing their song, to utilize your gifts to do their dances, to utilize your gifts to do their work. Because remember, when the vampires all got together, they had songs. Irishman came out with the Irish kick dancing. They started singing. All of a sudden, the Black people who have become vampires, you starting to hear gospel harmonies in the background, but now we're singing their song. Now we're not singing the song that we were singing in the juke joint. Because when we were in the juke joint, these people were coming out of the fields. They wanted to just get free. They wanted to liberate themselves. This is how all forms of Black music and culture begin. We're just trying to get free. Block parties and hip hop. We're just trying to express ourselves. But here comes the negative energy sensing the power, because everything that they do is explicitly interdependent on you. They don't actually have the power, so they need to convert you, taking away your name, so you don't know your original African name, taking away your religion, so you scared of African traditional religion, taking away your language, so you don't know anything else but English, taking away your values, so now you're worshiping the dollar and you don't think about integrity or character, getting you completely outside of yourself in order to serve the interests of them. And when they were talking, the vampires had a good talk. They were like, yo, this is eternal light. This is love. And this is how sometimes these traditions will tempt you, because they'll start using flavory language to make it seem like it isn't what it actually is. They tell you that God loves everybody and that we're all one, but then they holding you as a slave. Well, which is it? So there's all these contradictions in the midst of them acting like everything is okay. We also see the power of blood being extremely symbolic. When we talk about the juice, it's the blood. When we look at African traditional religion, one of the things that scares people so much about it is that there are sometimes, not all the time, but it sometimes includes blood sacrifice. It might include blood sacrifice of a rat, of a chicken, of a goat, of a cow. And why do we sacrifice? What is the point of sacrifice? Typically, sacrifice is used to appease, to manipulate the forces of nature by feeding them. Because everything that is alive has to eat. Every one of us has to eat in order to survive. There has to be something that is powering our vessels in order to move forwards. And when we look at the fact that this movie came out on Easter, Let's be clear. Jesus was a sacrifice, and he said, I'm going to sacrifice my own self, human sacrifice, so there will never be other sacrifices again. So now when you go and you take communion, you're taking the wafer and you're taking the wine, that representing the blood of Christ. So every spiritual tradition, there is a significance of blood. And we know that blood is literally what powers your body, oxygenates all of your organs, the cells, that keeps you alive. Blood is so powerful that when I went to Cuba for the first time and I stood next to the drum in Lukumi's ceremony and I was on my period, the power of your menstrual blood is so powerful that they can hear the difference in the tone of the drum because it manipulates the power of the drum. And so when a woman can bleed for 3, 5, 7, 9 days without dying, we are seeing a wonder of the world. This is why in Ifa cultures, women don't necessarily go next to the shrine. And when they are on their period, there's different ideas about this. But essentially what it comes down to is the fact that she is the shrine. That everything that you're going to the church for, that you're going to the temple for, that you're going to the shrine for, the woman is the embodiment of that. She holds that within her own womb. And when we talk about Black women specifically, we know that she's holding the mitochondrial DNA of all human life. So the significance of blood and the fact that they literally had to drink your blood to get your actual juice in order to have eternal life. And so this is playing out all over. I mean, we can talk about Henrietta Lacks and the fact that stem cells of Black women are literally being used to create billion-dollar companies. We could talk about gene therapy being used to create longevity. We could talk about blood transfers, and literally there are, and you can watch the movie Don't Die on Netflix, and there's a white man billionaire on there who spends $2.5 million a year to live long. And one of the critical treatments that he does is he goes and takes the blood of his son and he gets it transfused into his body. And then he takes his blood and he gets it transfused into the body of his father. That young blood, when we talk about, hey, young blood, that young blood actually will keep you alive. So blood is extremely powerful. And when it comes to our own spiritual protections and fortifications, we have to make sure that we are eating well, that we are cleansing our blood, that we are oxygenating our blood, and that we are not taking chemicals, injections, and pharmaceutical drugs that are going to harm our blood. I also want to talk about the role of people of color. When I mean people of color, I mean not Black people and not white people in this film. You know, in America, we live in a dichotomy of Black and white. And so we have these extremes of you have Black on one side and you have white on the other, and we have everybody that kind of fits in between that spectrum. And in the film, we see 3 characters that are able to navigate within that spectrum. And so first we see the Chinese couple. The Chinese couple literally has a store, and this is a segregated Jim Crow Mississippi South. So we know that because of segregation, Black people were not allowed to go to some of the same spaces as white people. And so you see the Chinese having a role of intermediary. So literally in one part of the movie, they're able to have a store full of white people. They're able to have a successful business. They are able to sell products. They are able to exist. We see the difference because when Black people just tried to buy a little sawdust mill out in the middle of nowhere, we was ready to get our stuff taken from us. But yet here's this other culture that has been, you know, the model minority, if you will, that is allowed to exist, that is allowed to have business, that is allowed to thrive. And they were able to then walk across the street again and have a Black business and a Black community, where they were able to thrive, where they were able to receive resource, where they were able to be business owners. And so you saw in that their ability to go from side to side. Even with the woman who looked like a white woman, but said, hey, my dad was actually half Black. her ability to navigate white spaces and also navigate black spaces. And so all of these characters, you're seeing the privilege that they have, but also how they're able to benefit from black spaces, even though black people might not necessarily benefit from their participation in black spaces. These are the people who show up as our allies. They show up as saying, oh, I'm a co-conspirator. Oh no, I'm family. Remember when the vampires came, the conjure woman said, oh no, she's family. We thought she was family, right? She's down with us. She's in the juke joint. She's like, I want to listen to blues. I'm with y'all. Let me help you. Let me get you some money. And then she gets corrupted. When that money came out and those gold coins came out, she turned real quick because she wasn't able to discern good from bad. And then she brought that vampirical energy right back into the space. Then we see Chinese husband going out. Now, I think he was kind of innocent. He just got taken. But it was then when the wife flipping out because they threatened her child that she's inviting them into the space. She's hooping and hollering so much because remember, they couldn't get in the house until they were welcome. They had to be invited in. And she said, come on. Because the moment her child got threatened, and I get it, every mother wants to protect their children. But what we missed there is she was so about her daughter that she was ready to sacrifice the whole community. So we have to watch people who come into our households and say they are our friends and say they are our allies and maybe are good intentioned. Sometimes we want to work with everybody. We think everybody can come to the cookout. We think everybody can come to consensus. We think everybody can be part of the collective. But what we need to see is, do we share the same values? Are you ready to die for this? Are you ready to put your own individual needs to the side for the greater good? And these people were unable to do that, and it costs everything. So the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of the spiritual significance of the film, which literally is one of the most powerful scenes that I've ever seen on screen, which was the scene where they show the power of blues, its connection, and they went through all of the different timelines. They went back in time to show you the connection to its African roots, and they also advanced forward in time to show you the uninterrupted timeline of Black genius, of Black conjure, of Black creativity. Even as I said, the Asian spirit started popping off. I think there might even have been a Native American spirit that made an entrance in that scene. But what we are learning through that scene is when we are in a place of ceremony, when we are in a place of trance, when we are in a place of dance, when we are invoking different frequencies. And this also speaks to the fact of why we don't pray silently. This speaks to the fact of why when we worship, we don't sit in pews quiet and meek like some of these European worshiping situations. That's not how we get down. We call spirit forth because we are spirit. So when we are channeling, we got to raise the vibrational frequency, and that vibrational frequency allows us to tap in to the multidimensionality to the universe, that time stopped existing, that we were able to be in the past, present, and the future all at once. And all of those spirits and energetics entered the space. They entered the building. But if we don't know that they're there and we don't have the ability to communicate, and we're not feeding them and we're not appeasing them, we're not telling them how to support us, we don't have the support. And so this was a reminder to all of us of the power that our movement is not just movement. And this is why after the golden age of hip hop, there was a concerted effort by the CIA, by the FBI to destroy our leaders such as Tupac and Biggie, and to literally co-opt hip hop music to keep it at the low 808 frequency, low vibrational frequencies. We went in hip hop from singing our own songs to then allowing the ills and to seduce us into singing their song of disrespecting women, of calling Black people out of their name, of drugs and violence and all of that because of the co-optation of the entire music industry. And we're literally living that right now. And so that is why our music and our spell is so powerful. And even if you look at this film, The fact that this film is for us created one of the largest blockbuster weekends of the year. So even the film in itself becomes a spiritual ceremony, harnessing the power of Black energy, the power of the Black dollar, the power of the Black voice, the power of Black music, the power of Black creativity, the director, Easter weekend, utilizing our energetic currency, because we all went out to see the movie. We paid for it. We went to see it twice. We talked about it. Here I am doing a podcast episode. We're feeding the spell. We're creating more wealth. We're creating more opportunities to support what? The resurrection. Because what came after that weekend? The resurrection of Christ, Easter Sunday. What came after that weekend? The death of the Pope. Who is the Pope? The Pope represents crowned king of imperialism. The role of the Catholic Church. Let's be clear. They had investments in this system. They were not innocent bystanders, not only in America, but all over the world. And so with the death of the Pope, you have the energetic push of all these Black American people spending money and giving that energy into the death ceremony of their leader. So even in the film, what played out on the microcosm level, we then played out on the macrocosm level, giving our energy yet again to those same forces. So what is the invitation here, shapeshifters? The invitation is not to idol worship the makers of this film. It is to pay homage and to give thanks because they did the damn thing. No one's taken anything away for their creativity. But in all of this, in this time that we're living in this year that we're living in, we have to bring it back home. We have to bring it back to ourselves. We have to ask ourselves, who are the vampires in our own life? Who are the people, the forces, the ideas, the imprints, the relationships, the circumstances that are allowing us to get off of our square, that are allowing us to compromise our values, the enemies that are literally knocking at your personal door right now, that are asking to get in? Are you conjuring? Are you spell casting? Are we protecting our own selves from somebody else's spell, from somebody else's ritual, someone else's song, someone else's dance? This is why they say be in this world, but not of this world. And at the end of the film, we see he took off his mojo bag. He took off his protection. He martyred himself to say, I have to destroy this enemy. There is no voting with this enemy. There is no organizing with this enemy. There is no compromising with this enemy. There is only destruction. This negative force has to die. He embodied the Christ consciousness. He became the human sacrifice for the town, for the next generation, so that that young man he went to church. He made peace with it, but he held on to that guitar. He held on to the instrument to raise the vibrational frequency that was going to allow him to step into the multidimensional reality of being in communication with the past, present, and the future. And he utilized that instrument to find new sanctuary and new safe space. So where are we ready to sacrifice not our physical lives, but mindsets, ideas that are no longer serving us? Where are we ready to sacrifice for the next generation? Where are we ready to wield our own magic wands of creativity and sorcery in order for us to go out to find new spaces? And as someone who is living in Mexico, I really resonate with the fact of being a displaced African and not being able to find safe space. I don't have the ability to call myself indigenous to Africa, even though my ancestry is directly from Africa. If I go to Africa, they'll tell me I'm American. Even though I've traced my lineage in America, literally for over 500 years, my family literally still occupies land in Virginia that was a home of the Confederacy. And yet I still do not receive the full benefits of being an American. My parents left Richmond, Virginia because they grew up in the segregated South. My parents watched the Ku Klux Klan march down the street. My father was the first in his family to integrate into the high school and was called every N-word that you could. Leaving Virginia to say, we can't live like this anymore. We want freedom, and trying to go to California for freedom and finding it to an extent. Only for one generation later, someone like me who grew up there, not even being able to afford to live in the city that I was from. So here I am now migrating yet again to Mexico, where now people are looking at me saying, oh, well, you're not indigenous to this land. You're not Mexican, even though chattel slavery came through Mexico, even though Mexico was founded by African people. So this displaced African from America specifically, who fuels the world through their creative currency, but is still not able to benefit from their contributions. I'm living that right now. I have sought new safe spaces of sanctuary in foreign lands to seek the wholeness and the ability to be free. And so the journey continues. And so that is the greatest lesson and the greatest spiritual wisdom that we can take from this film is to personalize this film, to bring this film back to us, to look at all of the different elements that I talked about today, and to sit with ourselves and to ask ourselves how we're wielding our power, to ask ourselves what we're ready to let go of, what we're ready to come into, and to know that we are all susceptible to being infected. And I would dare say I have been infected by this cancer of degradation, this cancer of excavation, exploitation. We're still living in that. And so we all have to take a page from the young man at the end and knowing that the struggle continues, but that struggle does not have to be a struggle of pain, that we get to recreate and imagine new stories for our own well-being. And this is where the power of futurism comes into, because we know that we create our future in the present moment. And so this moment gives us the opportunity to imprint the future that we want to see. All right. That's what I have for you today, Shapeshifters. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the significance. Let me know in the comments. What are you thinking about this film? What resonated? What came up for you? Until then, I'll see you next week. Keep shifting. Bye. Thank you for tuning in today, Shapeshifters. Your presence means the world to me, and I deeply appreciate you being here. If something resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment and spread the love by sharing with others. Until next time.